You are listening to Red Team Radio.
This is part 2 with Valerie. If you have not seen part 1, please click the link at the top of the video. Now let's get right into it.
So it's amazing how sometimes when you're planning a physical test, how it can look very, very suspicious if a third party happens to wander in on your planning sessions. So there was a time when I was testing a facility that was close to Philadelphia, and the hotel that I needed to stay at was at the Philadelphia Naval Yard, which, if you haven't been there, it's parts of that are closed to the public and parts of that are open to the public where anybody can just go in, but you still have to go through the guard gate.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something new to me. I've never really been on bases that are partly open and what's required and what's not in that area. So because it was Philadelphia, that's drivable for me. Like, okay, cool. I'll just drive up Sunday night. We'll get all of our stuff going. Oh, my buddies are going to be in town. You know what? I'll bring the guns. We're going to go to the range. It's going to be a good time. Oh, wait, I got to bring the booze too because my buddies are going to be there. We're going to the range. It's going to be a good time, right? So I have my guns, my bourbon, all of my physical assessment stuff, including coveralls because we were testing an industrial facility that had some interesting quirks to it. And all my other stuff. And it's Sunday night. I'm driving up. It takes 3.5 hours in the best of conditions, but there was a thunderstorm that night, so it took forever. So I'm there late, and I'm looking at the GPS, and I see the hotel. But every road that I figured out how to get to on it, took me back to that gate.
Mm.
And at the time, I didn't have base access anymore. I did federal work, but I didn't have a CAC or anything that identified me as that. It's like, how am I supposed to get to the hotel? So finally, I'm like, it's been an hour. I've approached this area from every possible angle. It had to look so suspicious if anybody was paying attention, but it's pouring rain. Nobody's probably paying attention. It's dark. It's pouring rain. I'm freaking out. I got a backseat full of booze and guns and really weird looking tools and coveralls, and I had recently had abdominal surgery, so I also had this compressive vest that I needed to wear.
Okay.
So when you add that all together, that looks super suspicious, right? So it's 11:30 at night. I finally give up. I'm like, you know what? I'm tired. I'm just going to pull up to the gate and see what he says. Because normally when you go through those kinds of areas and you don't have a CAC or some kind of official ID, they search the whole vehicle.
Yeah, they'll bring you to secondary.
Right. I'm like, all right, well, if I'm going to jail, at least I can get some sleep. Let's do this. So I pull up to the gate, I kill my lights, the whole protocol. And I see somebody put on a yellow rain jacket. And it happens to be this vintage gentleman, let's call it, who puts on this rain jacket. He very much does not look like a gate guard and sort of waddles out. And I put the window down just a crack, and I'm like, I'm so sorry to bother you. I'm trying to get to the hotel. And he goes, oh, yeah, here, I'll open it. Come on in. Just kind of look around is this a test? Did I just fail?
Or did I win?
Or did I win, right? And this is not the facility that I'm testing. So, it's not like
Whoa.
my get out of jail free card is going to work here.
Now let's go to jail.
Right? Do not pass go. Do not collect $200, and we're keeping your guns. Please and thank you.
And booze.
And booze.
Yeah.
Yes. It was good booze, too. It's bourbon. So I passed that obstacle. My buddy gets to town the next morning. We're getting everything planned, and I've got all the stuff set up in my room, right? Because I was there first, right? Including large blown up maps with areas marked around the industrial sites. Because, it's easier to mark them so we can all see them and plan and do what we need to do, right? But again, there are all these electronics laying everywhere. You've got these maps with these industrial sites marked in yellow and orange and highlight colors. And then on the back of the desk chair is the vest that I have hanging for my abdominal surgery. So I'm like, we don't need any housekeeping while I'm here. There's booze, there's guns. I'm like, we're good. We don't need any housekeeping. That's fine. That's also the same assessment that I had the ghillie suits for. So there's a fun photo of me and my buddy walking around the hotel on base in ghillie suits. So, good memories. But yeah, I mean, that looks really, really suspicious to, hotel cleaning staff, who are paying attention. So have to be careful.
I remember it now.
What was it?
Tell me about the time they thought you were
That's what it was. That was the time they thought I was a
Was that
yeah,
one?
That was
okay.
the time, yeah. Yep.
Because I was thinking like, oh man, this sounds like if house cleaning came in, they totally think you're
Right, because I had the door open at some point and the cleaning person was walking by and she just happened to glance in and I was like, you know what? We don't need any housekeeping. Thank you. That was it.
Okay.
So I wasn't sure if we were dropping the T word or not.
Oh, yeah,
so,
sorry.
Okay.
I'll bleep that out. Tell me the time that you were a beep.
That's awesome.
We'll just let people's minds wander from there.
You could make the most hilarious episode by just randomly beeping out certain words and be
God.
like,
Don't give the audience that idea.
oh, I'm totally going to make my own version where I beep out random words and it's going to be perfect. Just because it's a bad idea doesn't mean it won't be a great time. Words to live by.
Oh, yeah? Okay. I'll take your advice.
That's a terrible idea. Yeah. What time?
Son of a bitch, I'm in.
Yes, you son of a bitch.
Did they interrogate you or anything? Or
They did not. No.
No? Okay.
Just some weird looks and some lingering stuff. And, some weird looks from the staff at the front desk. And that was it.
I get weird looks from customs all the time.
I mean, I get weird looks from a lot of places.
Yeah.
But
They're like, oh, shit, we're going to let this guy back in the country.
not this guy again.
Okay. No.
Right? One of the nice things is that I look like a soccer mom, which I have been in the past.
Minivan and all?
No, not minivan.
Oh, okay.
Giant SUV.
Oh, okay. So yoga pants too?
No,
Oh, okay.
not really.
I didn't know
yoga
how
pants.
far soccer mom you went.
Not that far.
I joke about that with my wife all the time. That's like her kryptonite.
Yeah.
Like, I'm never gonna be a soccer mom.
Minivan was where I drew the.
Yeah, that's her line too.
I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, she was like,
I don't
minivan.
mind being a soccer mom. I'll hack the Wi-Fi or something if I'm bored.
Yeah, no.
But not the minivan.
Yeah, she doesn't want to do the minivan. She's like, I'll do a big SUV. I was like, you have to do yoga pants at the same time then. And she's like, that's not a thing. And I was just like,
I mean, it probably is.
it is 100%. The stereotype where we lived, if you had a big SUV and you're a soccer mom, 100, there was 0% chance you're going to be wrong. Always, it was like yoga pants and then like a floofy, tank top
Whatever.
type thing. And I was just like every single time. And then we were at a park where there was a soccer tournament and she saw it and she was like, oh, crap.
I see what you mean.
Totally it.
Right?
Well,
For the longest time.
Just own it if you're going to do it. Come on.
Right. I was the driver for all of the Girl Scout troop events because my vehicle held everybody. Right. So it was the Girl Scout mobile, which was great. I didn't mind that at all, but it wasn't a minivan. It was one of the...
it was an Explorer.
it was a Nissan Armada back when they built it on the truck frame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it handled wonderfully. Then it just
Do they still make that?
They don't make it on the truck frame.
Oh, okay.
The newer models are more square body, almost like a box. But it doesn't handle the same. I rented a few just to make sure, but it's not the same.
It's like their version of the Ford Flex.
No, it's sort of like...
I know it's like, it was supposed to be like their large off-road SUV, like answer to the Explorer.
Yeah.
But when you said box, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, maybe not quite that boxy. Sort of like the baby brother to like the Wagoneer.
Oh, okay.
In more modern terms. But they don't handle the same. They're terrible in parking garages. Whereas the older one, because it was the center of gravity was different. It was like I could parallel park, like I didn't have issues, and I don't see well. And if I could parallel park that boat, just about anybody could do it.
Didn't have the button where you just like press the button and it's just like looking at parking spot and then it parks for you?
No. So they stopped making that model in 2011.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think that was a thing in 2011.
I don't know.
I don't think so. No, I'm not that baller. I don't have that kind of vehicle that parks itself.
Seems like every vehicle now parks itself though. Like my truck and my SUV both park themselves, which I hate because sometimes I'll hit the button by accident and it's just like when I'm actually trying to park
Right.
and then it's just like, oh, sensing parking spot. I was like, no, cancel that.
That's not what I wanted.
Yeah, I can park my own vehicle. Thank you, Ford.
Get your robots in line.
Yeah, that's right.
Your robot servants in line. Between the Roombas and Alexa, all of that stuff.
Goes back to the metaverse.
Right?
We don't need robots because we're going to all be in the metaverse.
I don't know. I kind of like the Roombas. They're kind of handy.
Yeah, I mean, it is good to be able to streamline, floor plans for places to China.
I didn't say I used one. I just said they were handy, and I never said what they were handy for.
No, okay, I'm sorry. You're like, it's for my home defense, actually. I have a claymore on top of it.
Yep, I was going to say Roombas with claymores. Release the Roombas. And like the ones that cut the grass. I came across one of those in the wild a while back, and I just kind of stood there and watched it for a while. I'm like, this is kind of neat.
Yeah, I saw one of those, and it was like a few years ago. And I was like, oh, snap, look at that.
Right?
Okay, I wonder how much they cost. And I was like, I'm never getting one of those.
I never said I was getting one.
Yeah.
Just amused for a few minutes. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Not for me.
Yeah, I looked at the price, and I was like, oh, not for me.
Right?
So what question do you want to ask me?
Just one? I only get one?
Maybe two.
He said with an exasperated sigh.
I'm just worried.
As you should be. So I would like to know how you got into security. I don't really know the story of how you got into this industry.
On the digital side or on the physical side?
Both?
Okay. Is that your two questions?
No, that's one. That's a two-part one question.
Okay.
Aha, using my thinking cap.
So on the digital side, I started on the digital side.
Okay.
It started super young. Just doing tech stuff and programming. Not very good programming. But finding like flaws in deployments of Active Directory or deployments of networks that have no Active Directory and they're just work groups, right? So like smaller mom and pop medical clinics or stuff like that. And then I started to do like networking as like installing networking into like smaller medical clinics. This is when I was a teenager. And so a lot of it was like self-taught type of stuff. And then, I worked in high school, I worked as a contract system administrator. I worked for a place called BBNCS. But they had like contracts with places like, well, maybe I shouldn't say the places.
With places.
Yeah, with like large car dealers and
redacted.
And like larger construction companies and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I'd be doing like their Exchange administration, their Active Directory administration. On the construction company, I'd be doing like their network administration. They'd have like Cisco networks, so configuring and deploying those for them. And then I got fired from that job because I got called by by the government to do an interview, and they're like, "You have an interview tomorrow." I was like, "I have work tomorrow," and they're like, "This is your opportunity."
Not anymore.
So I had to go on base, and it was for a civilian position.
Mm-hmm.
And like I told my boss last second, he's like, well, if you don't show up to work tomorrow, like you're going to get fired. I was like, okay,
Right.
well.
Guess I'll risk it.
Yep. So I did get fired. And I didn't get that job.
In true government fashion.
Yeah. I was their number one candidate. Yeah, there was a weird Navy thing that happened. And I was like, so dumb. My friend did get the job, though. And he was like, the reason why I didn't get that job is because of one particular individual. And later learned that they are a terrible person to work for.
Oh, dodged a bullet then.
They were the highest ranking member in this panel. So it was like a panel of 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and, in a panel interview, how do you do a panel interview, right? If someone asks you a question, you have 5 people that are there. You start by answering the question with them. And then you go and you look at every other person while you're answering the question. Then you end it with that person that originally asked you, right?
Okay.
No.
Sounds like a solid approach.
Yeah. No, she was angry about that. She was this naval officer, and she was just like, he talked to me, and then he talked to all the other male panelists while he was answering this question, and then he ended with me. Like all the other panelists were like, yes. And she's like, well, I'm the highest ranking military officer on this panel. You should just be responding to me. Turns out she was a terrible person to work for, and they have a whole bunch of turnover.
What a shock.
Yeah, so my friend actually really hated that job, so much so that he got out of technology for a little while. I was like, damn, okay, maybe I lucked out, but I got fired. And I worked for a tow company for a little bit, and as a dispatcher, and then I started doing the lockouts for vehicles.
Okay.
And I didn't know how to do lock picking or anything at this time. I didn't do lock picking, but I knew how to. I mean, I had pick a lock with a paper clip with my buddy Mike before. We picked my parents' front door lock, right, with paper clips. That's
Liquor cabinet. Front door lock. Come on. Okay, sure. You tell everybody that.
Yeah. That's my story. I'm sticking to it now.
Yes, dear.
No, you were picking the liquor cabinets, right? Got to make those counter accusations.
Yeah, I grew up in a Baptist household. There was no liquor cabinet.
My parents didn't drink either.
Okay. So. Well, that story just got not exciting.
Sorry to disappoint. Yeah.
Right.
Then an EMR software company brought me on, and I was doing security stuff with them. Then I went to university, and I was more interested in political science. But I learned that you could work for the government, like being a hacker. And I learned that sophomore year in high school from a family member. And he was like, oh, you could do this as a job. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, don't act dumb with me. I know you're doing hacking shit right now. I'm like, oh, okay.
I had to learn that from a book.
Yeah. So I that kind of shaped where I wanted to go. Same uncle told me hey, go to this university, which I thought was a total scam. He's like, nope, you get 100% job opportunity with the government if you go and graduate. While I was there, I got an internship running a research lab for exploit development. So did that interview, hardest interview I've ever had to do still. Then I had 2 weeks to prove myself, or they'd let you go.
Okay.
So was
2
able
weeks
to.
is not very long.
Nope. Found a bug and Nokia S60 phones where we could crash the processor, and then found an ejection point for some of the phones there. And
Nice.
Presented that, and they're like, cool, you have a job. Yeah, making a whole $8 an hour.
As a lead hacker, right?
Yep.
Making O days for $8 an hour.
I mean, yeah, that's exactly what I was doing.
It's when you look back on it, it's amazing,
Yeah. So, did that successfully for a little while. Got a lot of great experience from that job. I was able to do a ton of things that I normally wouldn't be able to do. Got convinced to drop out of university by elected official and a military member.
Oh, so you had the job doing exploit development while you were still in school.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you had completed school and then
No,
okay, all right.
no.
Making sure I got the timeline here.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I dropped out of school. I don't have a bachelor's or anything like that.
I don't think it's held you back. My personal opinion, for what it's worth.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't think it has either. But so I dropped out of university. I did walk at a graduation ceremony for my university. I was convinced them to let me do that. Because that was my wife's requirement, is like you have to walk. The requirement was not like you have to get a degree,
Okay.
Technicalities there.
Sure.
She didn't.
I love a good technicality.
She didn't interpret it as that, but
I'm sure she was not amused.
she was not. I was married, now making $16 an hour.
Yes.
Bam, doubled my pay.
Cha-ching.
And then as soon as I dropped out of university, I got hired on officially full time. I was already doing more than full time, but you know how it is with the government. Like,
yes.
You're an intern. You're only allowed to work 20 hours a week. And that's what you better put on your time card. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I can work more hours and not put it on my time card.
Because time card fraud's not a crime when it works in our favor.
That's right. Yeah. When you put extra time on there that you didn't work, that's bad. But if you worked 90 hours that week and you only put 20, that's good.
That's good, right? And you're young and you're shining, wholesome face is like, okay, boss.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
been there.
Did that for a little while. And then in that career, so that's like I would consider my first like hardcore security job, was running that research lab, right? In that research lab, there was a group that needed something from me, and I was able to convince them to let me go to all these cool, how do I word it? It's going to sound cooler than it really is, but all these cool like clandestine trainings, right?
Understood.
And they're like, they didn't agree to it at first, but then they really needed the thing. So I built them that thing. They heard that I might have built that thing for them already. And so they're like, okay, you start training tomorrow. I was like, cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Your shining, young, fresh face.
Where did I go? And then I like meet these people that are just like, veteran intelligence and special forces operators. And they're like, we're going to tell you how the real shit works, kid. I was like, oh shit. So my first training was clandestine entry.
That's fantastic.
And it was great. I was really nervous. So I brought some of my toys. I was like, oh, well, if I do really shitty at this, maybe they'll let me still stay in this program if I bring some cool things.
You can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit, right? Yeah.
So
words to live by.
Yeah. So I brought some toys there, and they're just like, they were talking. I was like, well, what are some problems that you've ran into the field? And they're talking about cell phone acquisition, stuff like this. I was like, check this shit out.
I got you.
Yeah.
My guy. I may not know much, but I know this.
I was like, check this out. And I'm pulling out these Pelican cases, and they're like, what the fuck is this nerd? And because I was super panicked, like that first day.
Yep.
I was not, like, I'm not a natural lockpicker. And I was not doing great in lockpicking. And I was like, oh God, they're going to like tell my point of contact, like, he's not cut out for this, right? He's, he might have passed the physical portion of the of our requirement, because that time I was a lot more fit and able-bodied, and but I was thinking like they're just talking mad shit and like not gonna let me show up to the second day of class, but they did, and then that class completed, and then I went and did other trainings. And those were all interesting, and it opened up my eyes to a world I never would have seen before, right?
Yeah.
Just as a nerd that was sitting in a lab with no windows, right?
Yes.
Who would then get shipped off to go do other labs with no windows, and do other nerd shit there, right? So like I had a lot of eye-opening experiences. It did, in the eyes of some people, probably made me seem cooler than I really was. Like my other well, I'll call them classmates, because they were usually like a team that would like be working together and they know each other. And then like this random nerd is now being injected into their training.
Not
so they're
random nerd. This man of mystery.
Yeah. So they'd be like, I had one instructor. He's so funny, and I think he did this on purpose, because I had worked with him beforehand and built him some gear, and now he was an instructor. And he's like, this is Drew. He like the start of class started. He's like, this is Drew. He's supposed to be here. End of questions. And I was like, what the fuck? And these other people are like, what the fuck? And then so like, lunchtime happens and we're all hanging out, and they're like,
he's giving everybody the side eye, right?
Yeah, they're like, so what do you do? And I was just like, oh man, like I build things. And they're like, what do you build? I was like, what do you want? And they're like, we want, XYZ capability. I was just like, I could build that for you. And then like, the class would be like 2 weeks long or something like that. And at the end of the class, I'd build like a little proof of concept for like what they wanted. And they're like, oh shit, could you like make this
for realsies
deployable? Like, could we bring this? Like, can we bring, I was like, well, this is just proof of concept. But if you come to my lab, we can have a conversation and we can talk about other things we can build, things I can't tell you about here. And they'd be like, yeah, let's do that.
I'm gonna get in the van.
Yep.
I already have the candy.
Yeah. So there was a few like things like that where it was just like,
that's so great.
They're just, these are the guys that are doing it for real, right? And I'm not, right? I'm just a nerd who swindled my way into these things. And
social engineering.
Yeah. So, but it really like opened up opportunity. There was a lot of teams that I wouldn't be able to interface with, I was able to interface with. So that was my first foray. So that's where it started, from
awesome.
Middle school, starting building networks for hospitals, to then, doing PC repair and network engineering and system administration in high school, to exploit development.
But what you were doing was learning all the building blocks
you needed
to know.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And system administration, I think, helped me the most with like,
odd, isn't it?
Yeah, because we had a lot of weird problems that we'd run into. So we'd have to, try to deconstruct programs to see how things work. And I just always had a natural like desire to understand certain things. In my university time, actually, there was a period of time where I thought about joining the military. But I actually had someone in the military convince me, like, no, like you need to work in labs. And I was like, well, tell me more.
What are those?
And I was like, what do I do in a lab? And they're like, you do nerd shit. Like the military does not offer at this time anything that would be comfortable. What you need to do is you need to work for, an intelligence group. And which I did not. I'm not saying that's what I worked for.
May or may not have.
But before, shut up.
I was giving you an out. Look at that. Shut up. All right. Now we've reached sibling level of banter. I like this.
No, did not. Just regular lab dude.
Okay, just regular lab dude.
Working for a private defense contracting company. But
gonna leave that alone.
And so this Marine, I forget his name, but he was like one of my really good friends in college at that time, and he like totally convinced me not to do this. He's like, don't join the military, like you need to be working like with our nerds. So I was like, okay.
Wait, there are other nerds.
And,
show me the nerds.
Well, I was like, no. This recruiter was telling me this, and this, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, he's lying to you. Like, absolutely. Like, what you're going to be doing, he was like, during the cycles of training that we have right now, like, you're not going to be doing shit for like 18 months. So what you're going to be doing is sweeping. They're not going to like accelerate you through a program or anything like that. It's like, that's not how this works on that side.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if I believe you. So I talked to the recruiter and like, oh no, sure enough, the guy was right. At
least they were straight with you.
Yes. And And so just had that opportunity to do that internship at the lab, and then run the lab. So there you go. That was a long answer into how I got into
Great answer.
nerd stuff, and then how I got into physical security. Once I started to do the physical security stuff, though, my first engagement was to break into a TS cleared facility.
Okay.
So that was fun. It was super fucking easy, like ridiculously easy.
A lot of it usually is.
Yeah, a lot easier than it should have been, in my opinion.
Yes.
It also contained a biolab in there as well.
Okay.
Which I was told, do not go in the biolab. At that time in my life, I did not understand why they did not want me to go into the biolab.
Right.
But I'm glad I listened.
And didn't want to be like, oh, I'm extra cool. I went in there when I wasn't supposed to.
Yeah.
Now I have a third eye right here
That's
on
right.
my temple.
Super.
Look, it blinks.
Yeah, it's super Ebola.
I call him Blinky.
So the instructors for that course, that for the covert entry course, one of them like became a mentor for me.
Mm.
And he's actually the first person we interviewed at this for the podcast.
That's fantastic.
So in the podcast we call him Mr. Anderson. And,
yes. Mr. Anderson.
Yeah. And he after that we started to build new content and stuff like that, and do trainings,
Mm-hmm.
and teach other people how to do clandestine entry and stuff like that. So it was good. It worked
fantastic.
out. And now I'm just a nerd again, building a new research lab.
Just a nerd? I don't know. I wouldn't call Red Team Alliance just a nerd.
And now we do RTA stuff. So
Great. What's your favorite type of engagement?
oh, my favorite type of engagement is working with working against a company that thinks they can't be penetrated.
Those are so satisfying.
Yep. So I've had a few engagements where we actually had one engagement where they're like, well, it doesn't matter what we allow you to do because you're not going to get in. And this is when I owned my own company. I've had some of these types of conversations when I didn't own my company, so I couldn't be as aggressive as I was on this particular call.
Okay.
Which was, I was like, oh, okay, you know what? You're probably right. We're not going to get in. So let's make a deal. One, we'll do this engagement for free, absolutely for free. So the cost of the engagement was multiple six figures, right? I was like, we'll do this for free, but anything that we steal, we keep. And they're like, oh, no. I was like, whoop.
Wait a second.
We're not getting
possibly get in.
We're not getting in.
Which is it?
And like the other people on the team that were on the call are like, listen, okay. Listen, you might get in.
That's some amazing backpedaling you did right there. Let's see that again in slow motion.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was like, seriously, guys, we will do this for free. And, but we get to keep everything we steal. And they're like, no. We can't do that. I was just like, tell your CISO that you're about to save, lots of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And because we're not getting in, they're like, okay, we get it.
I love it.
You're probably going to get in. Okay. And I was like, cool. I'm just here to get you guys more funding. Like, I'm not against you.
Right.
I'm for you all. So like, let's work as a team and tell me what you need me to break so to get you the funding that you need. And they're like, okay, cool. Like, this is what we need to do. Right. There's another one where there was a group that worked with the government. They handled some like keying material with them. Mm-hmm. The owner, the business unit owner for that particular group in this large company was just like, Red Team's not going to get in. And it's just like, you can't get in. You can't get in. Trust us. Like, we've had other security teams try to get in.
Oh, I love that.
They never did a physical though. Like, it was always network based, right? And they're like, they never could get in. Never could get in. What?
Yeah, because we scoped it into this teeny tiny box to where we can't even get in.
Yeah.
Stacking the deck. Back to that earlier
That's right,
conversation.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, you're really not helping anybody.
And, so we're able to show we're able to get it and get everything that we needed, right? So the companies that are just like, you ain't going to get in, that's what I like to go up against.
It's such a good challenge.
Because at the end of the day, it's not like I know I'm going to get in. So it's not like a big achievement for me getting in. It's not like, haha, I got in. It's like, yeah, I know I was going to get in. Okay. But let's talk about why I was able to get in. And let's talk about why you thought I couldn't get in. And let's find those convergence points so that we can make sure that when shit goes down for real, that your company is ready for it.
Yes.
Right? It might be a utility. I don't find a lot of utilities that are very very anti, having to do testing and stuff like that. I find vendors of utilities that the utilities use, like a battery company in particular. I want to say the name so bad because I absolutely hate this battery company.
We can redact it.
Yeah, no. Even though they're not the company that hired us, it's still a utility, and
Understood. Understood. Well, and that's the sticking point of all of it.
Yeah, is
hundreds of thousands of people rely on this battery company in a roundabout way.
Yeah, and they're like, why do you?
They don't care.
Why do you? And it was just a pen test, right? And they're like, why do you have reverse engineering in your pen tests? I was like, well, reverse engineering can sometimes happen during pen tests. And this guy was just like, I've been doing security for longer than you've been alive, and reverse engineering is not a pen test. And I was like, I have no doubt that you might be doing security longer than I've been alive, but you've been doing pen tests wrong the whole time.
Correct.
And they're like, just take it. You can reverse engineer, just take it out of the language. And I was like, no, absolutely not. If I can reverse engineer, why can't I just have it?
Right.
And they're like, well, we're not in the business of suing people. And a point of contact and myself at the exact same time said, you're not in the business of suing people until you are, right?
Right.
And this is the point of contact was on the utility side.
Okay.
And this battery company was very, very anti looking at anything. Let me tell you, there be dragons in their software solution. And it's absolute hot garbage. Maybe it's gotten better, but it was.
Highly doubt it.
It was garbage. So the battery tests that we were supposed to be doing became a test on a Sierra wireless unit. I was like, okay, whatever.
Understood.
So,
and if we're going to talk big picture, I think that's really the piece that's missing from the security puzzle. It's, we do things like legislation, things like NERC SIP for the energy industry, but there's nothing that's holding the vendors accountable. That force is probably not the right word, but it's the only word that I have right now, so that's the one I'm going to use. That forces them to patch and correct certain critical vulnerabilities, whether it's in the energy sector. I have a lot of experience with this in the transportation sector. The vendor comes back and says, yeah, that's bad. We're not fixing it.
Yeah.
And nothing gets done.
Yeah.
And that's a piece that I really want to help see get addressed at more of like a congressional type level.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if law is the first route I would go. I would want to, and I had a client that actually did this fairly well. I want the clients to pressure the vendors more. So I had a client, we found a vulnerability. There's a radio program that they were using, or a radio setup, both software and hardware that they were using. And we found a backdoor. This company that we found the backdoor in, like, it was a legitimate backdoor, not just a whoopsies, how did that get there?
Forgot to disable that account.
It was just like, this was their way in case something like really bad happened.
With it. Yeah.
And they're just like, it required us to build a physical cable and plug into one of these radio units. And they're like,
which is not difficult.
Yeah, they're like, well, how did you build that physical cable? I was like, I have your plans right here. I'm like, how'd you get those plans? I don't know.
It doesn't matter.
Found them in the trash? Doesn't matter.
It really doesn't matter. Stolen from somebody's network?
Yeah. I
Anyway.
was just like, is this not your cable? Like, this is your cable, right? And it had a password. And the password was
I'm sure it was
very, very
a
easy
terrible
to
password.
guess.
Yeah.
Yes. Literally, we guessed it, like on the first try. We had like a list of 20 passwords to try. And it was more than just a hunch based off experience with this radio platform before.
Sure.
And so the client, they're just like, well, we can't really fix a back door. So the client was just like, that's okay. If you don't want to fix a back door, that's fine. We don't have to use your product. What we are going to have is we're going to release ownership of this vulnerability, and we're going to let Drew's team publish a paper on it, and for public distribution.
Mm-hmm.
And the company was just like, oh shit, no.
Kind of strong-armed.
Let's not do this, because if they stopped using their radio program, they would have lost tons of, we're talking millions of dollars of revenue for this company.
Mm-hmm.
But what they didn't want is because there had already been a backdoor found in their product beforehand.
Okay.
And they got a lot of heat, and they lost customers for that.
Mm-hmm.
And this client knew that, and they're just like, okay, like, we're just going to let Drew and his team publish this paper then.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm down. Like, we'll get this out quick. And the client was like, yep. And we're going to like make a note on that paper saying, this is why we're not using this product anymore, because this paper was published. And it was just like that vendor was like, well, we're going to fix this vulnerability for you now in the next few weeks.
It's this one time as a special favor to you.
Yep. And they did. And to the vendor's credit, they did fix that vulnerability, which is really, really easy to fix. It was like just disable fucking port, like SSH over serial, essentially, is what it was. And you'll be good to go.
But what I found in like places like the transportation industry, even some of the most largest transportation groups in the United States don't have enough pull with these industry giants.
Yeah.
And the software is already so far embedded in various applications, they can't walk away from it. And that's not just a transportation problem. That's a huge ICS SCADA problem, as you know. You've seen it in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And they're stuck between a rock and no solution. You know, It's not like we can just switch it to company B's software instead. You know, they lose that software, they lose that capability, and that's their lifeblood. And I don't know what the solution is to that. You know, I know that although the energy sector was not great at security at all before NERCSIP, at least NERCSIP was enough of a stick instead of a carrot, right? Hey, you have this much time and we're going to start fining you for when you're out of compliance. It was enough of a big stick to get them to start locking things down. Whether it was for the wrong or the right reasons, it was something. And, you know, for the vendors, we got to find something that's equivalent.
Yeah, but just being NERP, and I know you know this, so I'm preaching to the choir when I say this. Just because you are compliant with NERPSIP doesn't mean you're running a secure lockdown utility.
Absolutely not. I have a slide that I love to use that says compliance versus security, and it's you know, the gate, the parking arm where everybody just goes around it. Yeah. And I get that, and it's definitely not perfect, but it was a good first step in at least starting to get some of these organizations to take security seriously, or seriously enough to not get fined.
Well, and the reason why I usually shy away from legislation being the answer is because I'm in DC talking to legislators, or more importantly, their staffers, right? Because they're the ones that are actually writing or reading the stuff anyway. There's legislative staff, and they are like, I'll use the incident in North Carolina with the utilities when, because I did talk about this in DC,
Right.
when this whole when the new NERP standards were coming out about do we need to apply bulletproofing armor for every single substation here in the U.S., right? And I won't go into all the detail that I went into there, because the short answer is, if you do this, it's going to cost the utilities $1 billion up front for some of them, and how utilities get to charge for upcharging doesn't necessarily work with that, and a lot of these utilities can't afford it. And then secondly, the customer is going to be paying for that over time. And thirdly, even if you armored every single utility, there is a very simple solution, and I'm not going to talk about it on this podcast, but there is a very simple solution to cause devastating amounts of outages in the U.S. without, and I'm not talking about hacking into the grid or anything like that.
Right. It's very no tech.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
And it is a very simple solution, and it is a very scary solution, and you are still vulnerable to this. So that $1 billion that you just spent literally did shit.
Well, it's just like a lot of other preventative technologies. It protects against X, but is useless against Y. So not completely useless, but I understand what you mean.
And I was just but the government was looking at mandating that all these utilities were going it. And this is the thing, I was talking about them as listen, substations being shot up has happened for a long time.
As long as there have been substations.
And, a transformer, usually it's smaller transformers, but a smaller transformer gets shot once a day, right? That doesn't mean it's not a problem that we should try to address, but we're not going to fix that generally with law. But what you're wanting is a knee-jerk reaction to something that happened recently. Why didn't this happen when we had the legitimate terrorist attack that happened in California against a substation that was coordinated, and we still don't know who did it?
Right.
And a lot of people don't remember. I know you do, because you work in the similar industry.
Right.
And we talk about it in that industry. But a lot of normal people, and probably even a lot of people on the podcast, don't remember that there was a legitimate terrorist attack around the 2012-2014 period. I think it was 2013, but somewhere in that period, against a California substation or a California power company, and we have zero leads on that. And it was an extremely successful terrorist attack against a substation, and it's viewed in the intelligence community as a test run, right?
Absolutely.
And why didn't we have this type of reaction when that happened?
Right.
Why is it now?
Why this incident?
Right.
Yeah.
That still, and that the stuff that they're talking about doing would not prevent against the legitimate, real terrorism that we had, a much more coordinated attack than fucking, some
Billy Bob and his
middle class Billy Bob person and his, 308 rifle or whatever it was. Right. So don't get me wrong, utilities, if you're out there and you want to do ballistics testing, we've done ballistics testing, totally down to do that. We'll make it a team outing. We'll invite Val too.
Thank you.
I know you want to blow stuff up and shoot stuff, so.
You know how to show a girl a good time.
And, that was that's why I shy away from legislation, because a lot of times it becomes knee-jerk reactions that are over-prescribing for a problem that doesn't affect most of the things, and actually doesn't affect, and it takes away resources from other things that the utility needs to focus on to make sure that we have reliable, sustainable power during, I'm going to say it, I get shit for saying it, during World War III, right? So.
During other international conflicts. Conflicts, domestic and abroad. Yeah, how about that?
The global war the global world at war, right?
Well, and it's not the utilities as much that I have a problem with as the vendors. The vendors who are hey, this software does a very, very important job. It's broken. We're not patching it because we don't have to, and nobody's going to make us.
But that goes to my point on why I focused on the utilities is because the legislation, it's going to be NERP that does that, right? Or if it's a gas, it's going to be TSA because they don't handle gas.
Right.
it's not going to go down to the vendor, right? It's going to be put on the backbone or on the backs of the utilities themselves instead of the vendor.
Right.
Because
and then we're just back where we started.
Right. Because that's how legislation works, right?
Okay.
And that's what my concern is. So if we overprescribe something that then gets put on, because we have that legal channel, and we have those groups, TSA, NERP, and all that already set up, and that's what people are going to put it on.
But what about less of a siloed approach of, hey, if you're going to sell software, you have to have security updates for it for,
Well, and that's why I think
X amount of time.
I think that's where companies should really start looking at not supporting software companies that don't do that.
Right.
Like make it hurt financially for these companies.
Because that's really the only thing they understand is money.
Right. Yeah.
And
if we
they
can
don't care about public good.
Yeah, and if we can get the companies to put pressure on other companies, they will do that. And we've seen this work successfully before, especially in the security industry, where companies, and I'm not talking about like, oh, Target got hacked, right? Like this, if you guys want to know the hard facts, is every single company that's been hacked, with very rare exceptions, let's look at Target, Home Depot, stuff like that, their stock is worth more now than it was back then.
Right.
Right? Like, ooh, you got hacked. As long as you can survive, your stock is going to go up still.
Mm-hmm.
No one gives a shit, right? We have that short attention span where it's just like, oh, this company like didn't care about my personal data. And it's just like, oh yeah, but you know what? I love the socks from Target, so I'm going to buy socks from Target or whatever.
Right.
I don't really shop at Target. It's a little bit more.
Now we know your secret.
I know.
Socks from Target is Drew's thing.
Oh God. It's not, but
you're gonna edit that out, aren't you? You're gonna get a whole bunch of random boxes of socks.
We'll leave it in there, but no, socks are not my thing.
From Target.
From Target, yeah.
From Target.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna buy stock tonight, aren't you?
Starbucks gift cards from Target are my thing.
Yeah.
Send me a load of those. All three of my listeners. No. My mom. Val and Gary, all three listeners. No.
I'm trying to think of a retort to that that's polite enough for public consumption. We're just gonna leave that and be.
But yeah, so putting pressure on those companies financially, I think is the route that we should try first.
Yeah. Before
we start trying to legislate how companies operate on all domains, right? Mm-hmm. So, because once we start moving away from, your Title II company, and we can legislate certain things, and now it becomes a random software company, that is building a product and then trying to secure it at the same time, you're going to eliminate a lot of that competition that keeps those larger companies like GE and stuff like that, going back to the utility space,
sure,
on their toes,
mm-hmm.
right? So, and those larger companies are going to be able to find ways to swindle their way out of being compliant with these type of things.
Always.
Right? They have the money and the power to make sure that there's little carve-outs for, every company except for companies that start with G and end with E that contain two letters have to comply with this, right? So,
which is a whole nother podcast topic for another day.
It is, yeah. And so, I've had people ask like, oh, are you going to have other people on that aren't necessarily red teamers? Are you going to cover different topics? And we are. In season 1, we're covering primarily like red teaming stuff, right? But then we're going to talk about the security industry as a whole, and talk about legislation and the business practices and stuff like that as time goes on.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of adjacent industries that are very applicable to what your audience is looking for.
Yeah, so and that's where we're going with this, right? And then we already have some of those like season 2 guests lined up for those type of conversations.
Excellent.
And but that is a whole nother story in itself. A little sneak peek,
Season 2 spoiler.
Yeah, I know. And I know you've spent time in DC, and more importantly, the time that you spent in DC, not necessarily speaking with members of Congress. So I know you've done the whole route thing as well, but you've actually talked to key players who are in those government positions, not elected positions, but like they're the head of security for this government group or this particular branch. And stuff like that, and you have those relationships. So definitely, when we start doing more and more of those type of conversations, going to have you back on to give insights for what we can, because I know you can't talk about all those conversations, but give insight. Yeah, give insight of what it looks like behind the curtain. That's not elected officials or members of Congress and stuff like that, because there's so much that gets done in DC that is never touches the Hill. Right. Yes. Or never touches the president's office or anything like that.
Absolutely. It doesn't trickle. I guess it's trickle up. Doesn't trickle up.
Yeah.
That way?
Yeah. I don't know. It's a big.
There's a metaphor there. So it is really.
Doesn't trickle outward. Yeah. I don't know.
Right. Unsolicited comment is about my career and my time in various positions. One of the most rewarding parts of my career are the times where I was working in direct support with our warfighters, whether that's working with them on certain projects and testing or on projects that supported systems that were used globally. That was some of the most satisfying work that I've done. And I hope that opportunities present themselves for me to do more of that work because I miss it.
Yeah,
it's I miss working with the folks in the uniforms, and I miss all of that. That mission is one that it's easy to grasp.
Right. And it's ramping up again. War's cool.
I don't know if it'll ever be not ramping up again, in one way or another.
True story.
Whether that's physical, digital.
Right. Good way to black pill. No, I'm kidding.
Hey. I do what I can, man. Looking out for you. I'm a realist at heart. Yeah. I can try on optimism. I'm supposed to be the Debbie Downer. Oh, I didn't know we had roles.
Oh, yeah. You didn't read the cards? No.
No. I'm not real big on rules. I'm not sure if you've noticed that.
Oh, I had not noticed that before.
I do learn them usually so I can ignore them.
Oh, okay.
Or, I'm all about a good loophole.
Yeah, let me put that in the dossier. Oh, it's already in there. No.
Right? Maybe that's one of the other reasons why I haven't been able to work with a warfighter a lot lately. The more outside of the box my thinking, the less that folks who like things a certain way like it.
Yeah.
So that could be part of it. But
the Pentagon's so structured.
No comment.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't comment on that for you.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
I see you're applying for a White House press secretary there.
Right. Back when I worked with DISA, the Defense Information Systems Agency, those outside of government, they're kind of like the ISP for DoD, right? So it's long haul comm between bases and different military units and federal units worldwide. They actually used to, I don't know if they still do, have a White House communications agency, WACA, branch that traveled with the president. And at one time, that was the goal. I'm like, okay, I could do WACA, I could travel, I could do this. And then I met some other sort of hacker types that were working at DISA, and I was like, oh, never mind, I'm going to go over here and break things. And you know what? I think I made the right choice. I'm pretty sure that is aligned very well with what I enjoy. But
if you worked for WACA, I just had to give you a shirt that said Waka Waka Waka.
I know, right? Because that's all I think of every time I hear it. Waka 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 Waka. A little bit of Charlie Brown's parents in there. Wah, 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 wah. Yeah.
Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, right? You travel with a president. You must be Secret Service. No, it doesn't sound that cool. It's Waka.
Yeah.
Wah, wah, wah.
We're a service.
Right? Kind of. We're not very well known. Yeah, but I'm still pretty sure I made the right choice.
Yeah. I would agree.
Because I definitely enjoy it. And I really love teaching and just sharing that knowledge, whether that's, in a formal environment or just informal.
Mhm.
That's one of the things that I've done a lot of since I have become independent is a lot of guest lectures, little lockpicking classes and introducing certain groups, high schools and middle schools, Girl Scout troops and things like that, to what cybersecurity or physical security can be.
Right.
I had to learn that from a book when I was in college. I didn't know that that was even a career choice until I read The Art of Deception, which, oddly enough, I social engineered from the book rep when it first came out before I knew what social engineering was.
Perfect.
So, right, like I was definitely destined on this path before I even knew what this path was, which I think is just amazing. But
and then you got to work with the author of that.
Right? Yeah.
that
Yeah.
book.
Kevin and I became friends, and then we became colleagues and had some really great adventures. He pushed me in technical ways that I didn't think that I was capable of, and I grew a lot in that. We definitely have some very cool stories for me to pass along to his son. I actually started putting all that together in a
That's
little,
cool.
in a little scrapbook kind of thing. Photos that I've found from previous engagements. Like, oh, okay, yeah. All right, let's redact this. Let's redact that. Okay, all right, good. We got this little tiny square. All right, good. Look, that's Dad. I still have business cards of fake companies that we made to get into certain buildings and just fun things like that I'm starting to put all that together so that, one day when he's old enough, if he's not tired of hearing it by then,
Right.
he's going to hear some more about it while
course.
we sit and learn to pick locks or something, so it'll be really interesting to see if that apple falls far from the tree.
Mm-hmm.
Like how much of that insatiable curiosity is hereditary and how much of that is personality.
Right.
But Kevin and I had some amazing adventures and learned a lot along the way there, and vice versa. Right there, he had no experience with RFID technologies or any kind of physical access control. So I taught him just the basics. We were using things in the field like the Proxmark 3, which, as you know, is not a field tool at all.
Yeah. And not like this revision for like actually
no.
good stuff like green board.
The first one.
Yeah.
Like the size of like...
Only OGs know the pain.
Yes.
Making your own custom antennas because it didn't come with any.
Yeah, running it down, trying to run it down your sleeve and like palming it, but my hands were too small for the low frequency antenna, right? Because it would just look weird. So, I fashioned it into like this RFID like binder of doom is what I called it, But, oh yeah, like those were some rough times when you try to get card reads, trying to get within 3 centimeters of somebody's ID card, even as a woman, that can get really awkward really fast.
Yep. Yeah. Still got to do that ass grab technique that everyone hates. Sometimes I could do the bump, the I'm so sorry.
Yep. It's not that different from some of the methods used in pickpocketing.
Right.
Really.
Yeah.
Except for it's just a touch instead of a lift.
A lift. Yeah.
It's a digital lift, right?
Right.
But,
yeah.
Yeah, the pain was really real back then.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
man.
as a guy, I was like very uncomfortable, especially if we had to like target women and like grab one of their badges. I'm just like, yeah. All right, we're gonna find a woman red teamer to do this one because
you're like, I'm gonna get slapped.
Yeah. Yep, there are going to be HR calls here because I'm trying to steal your badge. Like, I really don't want to touch your butt, but that's where you keep your badge. And
so that's what we're going to have to do.
Like, I'm just here to break into your building, okay? Like, I'm literally have no interest in you.
Right? Which somehow makes that better and worse at the same time. Right? Because, she's going to feel great the rest of the day.
Right, yeah.
I have no interest in you.
Yeah.
Like,
I have no interest in you either.
That's a dangerous game, right?
Right.
It's either going to make their day or give you a black eye.
Yeah, exactly.
We eventually fashioned that into like, have you ever seen the grid-it boards? It's just a rectangle and it has a bunch of
pegs.
like stretchy bands, kind of.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about now. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like the cable organizer thing.
Right, yeah, it's sort of like a mole kind of thing, but except they're stretchy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
I had fashioned it all into that, and we had put the low frequency antenna like in the corner,
Oh, okay.
so that you could take it and you could walk and you could swing it,
Oh,
you know,
nice.
and that gave us a lot of flexibility because you could like pass somebody on the crosswalk, or you could, you know, kind of lean, you know, at Starbucks, you could sort of like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm reaching for a napkin as you stretch this out over here. And that really gave us a lot of mobility. But then you still had to, you know, it was harder times back then. You know, that struggle was so real. And, but at the same time, experiencing all the phases of that technology and how that has grown, you know, as a red teamer is good and bad, right? Because it's easier for me, which means it's also easier for everybody else.
Right.
And now with things like the flipper, you don't even really need to understand the technology like you used to need to.
Right.
To really do like duplicates and replay attacks. And that makes it very dangerous for the industries and the consumers of those products. So I haven't quite figured out good ways to help my clients with that, other than teaching, you know, back to the basics, right? Defense in depth. Okay,
Right.
you know, let's architect the solution, or let's assume that this particular card system is going to get compromised. What do we do now? Right? Like, what is so important? Like, what are the crown jewels, for lack of a better term, you know, in this building that you absolutely can't have unauthorized people getting to, you know? And then we architect around that, you know, whether that's using a different secondary type of card technology or a type of hardware key. And it's just back to defense in depth and layering those defenses.
Automatic analytics through the camera that alert the security team instead of being reactive, right? All these different items.
And I think that would be useful, especially to places that, you know, most places are understaffed.
Yeah.
Or there's a tremendous amount of fatigue that comes with trying to watch all of those monitors at once. And I don't really think it matters if it's at like an MSSP, you know, where somebody watches it remotely, or somebody sits there in the chair on site and watches it. Like, you're still watching a screen, and it still makes your eyes very tired, and it makes your brain slower. You know, you can only follow so many targets on those screens for so long before your brain and your eyes get tired.
Right.
So I think that there is opportunity,
Yeah.
you know, to use some of those analytics and not over rely on them. Right. I think that's going to be our other challenge in the next handful of years in the industry is, you know, helping clients learn to not over rely. You know, what happens if that goes down?
Right.
Oh, that's a cloud service. What happens if that server goes down?
Right.
You know, and so on and so forth. But I haven't found any silver bullets in this industry, so if you find some, you'll have to let me know where to find them.
G-Lock.
Yeah? Okay. Good to know. I have not found the perfect defensive solution anywhere. So if you have it, it'd be awesome if you clue me in on that.
Yeah,
But you can do it later when we're not recording.
Oh,
or
yeah,
we can
yeah.
redact it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fine too. So
I'm just waiting for the people to understand what I meant by G-Lock. It works great as a physical deterrent. Trust me.
look at the comments section for more.
Yeah. They're like, G-Lock,
Right.
what is that?
See the DuckDuckGo search. What is G-Lock?
Well, I
Seen a lot of
appreciate you
things.
coming on, and we'll make sure. Where can people find you online?
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah,
First off, where I plug my own social media channels.
that's right.
So I still have an account on, what's it called? What are the kids calling it these days? X.
TikTok. Oh, okay. X. Sorry, I didn't mean to offend
I
you.
do not have a TikTok account.
I saw that face of disappointment when I said TikTok. You're like, really? You think I had one? On Twitter.
Actually, it's, you think I'm young enough to have one of those? That's what the kids are doing these days.
You said, what are the kids doing these days?
Right?
That's why I said TikTok.
That's fair. That's fair.
yeah. So the millennials and Gen Xers that are all doing X and Twitter. So weird to say X because usually when we were growing up, that just meant ecstasy, right? Like gonna go
it could
do
mean a
some
variety of things.
Gonna be doing some rolling, on X. I went to
and
raves.
Whatnot, right? Apparently, we grew up in two very different places and times. So Twitter, X, whatever else you want to call it, it's Hacktress09, and my LinkedIn is that as well.
Perfect.
So I tried to normalize across everything, but super interested in helping out and guest lectures and things, whether that's high school, middle school, collegiate level. I really like telling folks about the industry, not just girls and women.
Mm-hmm.
We need everybody in the security industry, whether that's red team, whether that's blue team, whether that's audit. Audit has a place. Compliance. I mean, there's so much, and we need, as an industry, so much help. So I really like being able to help folks understand that, hey, there's a lot of opportunity out there. Some of this may be a fit for you. You should check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's awesome. Well, like I said, thank you again, and we'll definitely be having you on when we start talking more about the policy and DC stuff with security.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to Red Team Radio. Don't forget to like this episode, hit subscribe, and follow for more. Craving extra Red Team Radio exclusives? Dive deeper at redteamradio.net and click support for early episode releases and members-only content. Join us twice a month as we continue to unveil the unseen in the Red Team Chronicles. Remain vigilant and do not cease to be curious.